everyone. Welcome to Beyond Life Paranormal Research Podcast. I'm your host, Russell Reynolds. And before we get the show started tonight, I got to make an announcement. Beyond Life Paranormal Research Podcast will be switching to a new night starting next week. We will be switching to Saturday nights, 8 p.m. So we got a great show tonight. Got a good guest. This man has worked with Ed and Lorraine Warren. He's a seasoned paranormal investigator. He's also a demonologist, a spiritual empath, and he's authored several books. He's got some T-shirts that he made. You've probably seen some in my pictures on Facebook from the Warrens Paracon. And that's where I had met him, is at the Warrens Paracon. Without further ado, let's bring him on, Jason McLeod.
Hey there, how are you?
Hey, Jason, how are you? Welcome to the show.
I'm good. How are you? Happy Friday.
Yeah, happy Friday to you as well. Hello, Carol. Thanks for coming on. So tell my audience a little bit about yourself, who's not familiar with what you do and your work. And
All right. My name's Jason McLeod, and basically began uh, delving into spirit phenomena when I was about middle school in the 80s. And I really wanted to understand what happens, when we vacate the human body. And I always felt that we were spirits inhabiting a human body. And I got involved with Dr. Raymond Moody's work, Life After Life, and then started investigating other psychologists and hypnotic regression therapists, getting into human spirit cohabitation, for instance, by Dr. Edith Fiore in her book, The Unquiet Dead. I read The Demonologist by Ed Warren and Gerard Brittle and as a senior in high school in 86. And I put it back on the shelf, didn't want to get involved. And even though I had lived in Monroe as a young man, a young boy, actually, for a couple of years, my family moved around a lot for some reason. I knew it would be pretty easy to try to find the Warrens and get a hold of them. But I read their book and I was terrified for the families that were experiencing these things, especially the children, because this was a book filled with their most terrifying cases. And I said, no child should have to suffer demonic oppression or worse inside their own home. I mean, can you imagine your fortress? Your home is like your fortress of solitude, and you're supposed to be free from the menacing outdoors and this type of horror. But they were completely, traumatized. And what's fascinating is I tell everybody this story because it's so remarkable. I was with my friend Lou in his car in 1990, and he was a former Army combat medic with the rank of captain, and a current medic with the Norwalk Police Department. I'm sorry, EMS department. And he and I were listening to the radio, and it was about the 3 Men and a Baby ghost that was seen in the editing phase. Anyway, I turned to Lou and I said, that'd be so cool to work with them. I explained that I read their book, and he said, yeah, no kidding, And the next night he called me and said, you aren't going to believe who just called me. And I asked who. He said, Ed Warren. I'm like, what? And at the time, Ed was having heart issues. So he called the chief of EMS to have a medic referred to their team. And he gave them Lou's phone number. And he called Lou and invited him to their Monday night class. And of course, he was as stunned as I was. But I said, you have to get me in there. It's time. It wasn't time 4 years prior. I attribute this whole thing, this whole synchronicity, to the universal law of intention. That'd be so cool to work with them when I was ready, right? Not 4 years prior to when I wasn't ready. And yeah, no kidding. And then bam, that's how it was all put together. And that's God's honest truth. And it was amazing. And it is a synchronicity that started a whole chain reaction of synchronicities in my life. And so he told Lorraine all about this synchronicity, and she knows all about those. And she said, okay, invite Jason next Monday night, because he was going to their class in their home. And I got to go the following Monday. And I remember, the door opened, and there's this guy there, maybe a year or two older than me, and a good friend of mine to this day, Drew Thompson. And he's a psychic, and he was a medium, just like Lorraine was, and very, very talented in his own right. But he opened the door and welcomed me in, and I got to meet him. And it's like I entered the wizard's castle. Yeah, you get to enter into this, this phenomenal couple's, private home. And I see Lorraine in the distance. She was tall with her telltale bun, and she's just literally like gliding forward. Hi, Jason. I'm Lorraine Warren, honey. And then she's just like, look straight at me, you know, how strong is your faith, honey? Was the first question. Very serious, right?
Mm.
And she could see right through you, right? And I said, well,
Oh,
I have immense faith, right? I believe that I and the Father are one, right? And she nodded, because we all are. We're all connected to the creator of all that is. We're never separate, no matter what we've done. And she asked, why do you want to get involved in work of this nature? Right. And I explained, I read the Demonologist, and, you know, I was traumatized, and I, you know, for the children involved, and I'd love to be able to help. And she asked, so it's a calling then? And I said, I believe so. And she said, well, welcome in. And we sat down among another probably 15 people. And the people that worked with the Warrens at that time in 1990 did so because they were genuinely interested in helping people, unlocking the secrets of the universe, and working with this enigmatic, amazing couple. You know, there weren't any TV shows out at that time. Nobody was doing it to get on a show or doing it to get on Facebook, because there was no social media. Nobody was doing selfie mania because there were no cell phones all over the place. It was just a very serious group of people. And I was very proud to be welcomed in. And then in walks Ed in his flannel shirt, and he's pulling down the film screen, because we used, you know, 8mm projector type of stuff at that time, and to show us the cases that were currently under investigation. And all the people that were in the audience were the investigators. It wasn't just people coming in for thrills. These were their investigators, and New England Society for Psychic Research circa 1990. And that's when I joined, you know. And the cool thing is they sent Lou and I on our first case alone, together, representing the Warrens the next night, Tuesday night. I'm like, what? Right? And I was hooked. You know, we're all thrilled to be able to go do that. And that was amazing. And that's how it all began.
oh wow, yeah, that's
Yeah.
definitely interesting. What
Yeah.
was it like really working side by side with Ed and Lorraine?
So the first case that Lou and I went on, investigated on their behalf. And they only got involved in the very serious stuff because there were so many different cases under investigation. And it's mind boggling way back then when you consider the number of cases that were under investigation. I mean, now it's just exploding everywhere because, you know, there's 10,000 investigation teams out there, and there's show after show after show and convention after convention, none of which would exist if it weren't for the Warrens, by the way.
Exactly,
And
I agree.
so we went on several cases. Lou took me on Ed took me in his car to a case. Well, it wasn't a case, it was a house. And we drove up, we rolled by, and he asked, you know, this is it. And I asked, what's up? And he says, house is demonically infested. And so we went inside, and I always white lighted myself. I always Christ lighted myself, but I always knew I was protected. And we walked inside and walked, and he says, what do you feel? And I said, something feels off. I can't quite place it. And he went into the kitchen, and he opened the door to the cellar, and he turned on the light, and he pointed down there. Right. So I walked down there, and as soon as I hit the bottom, you know, on the cement floor, he turned off the light, closed the door, and chuckled, like slammed the door and started chuckling. And I said, okay, this is a test. You know, he's going to see if I'm going to scream bloody murder, and comes running up the stairs, you know, help me, let me out. But I stood there, and I just, you know, tried to reach out my feelings, and just, you know, see if I could sense anything or pick anything up. Because Lorraine always said, the more you're involved in cases of this nature, meaning spirit phenomena, the more your sensitivities will increase, and
Yep.
we'll see what those become, right? They're always something that they turn into something, you know, clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience, all those types of things. And anyway, I didn't really sense much. And he opened the door, turned on the light, and he said, come on up, you know. And I think, you know, that was a test. And he just, you know, I earned a lot of his respect that day, just because I was serious. You know, I wasn't going to be, I wasn't spooked, because there's really nothing to spook me, unless it was just the unknown or the idea that something could be down there. But anyway, he asked me if I wanted to spend the night there by myself. And I said, I don't think that'd be in my best interest. And he says, good, right? Tap me on the shoulder. Always trust your instincts, right? And anyway, so whether that was all baloney and it was just a test, or if it was a really demonically infested house, I don't know. But nothing happened. Nothing followed me or anything like that. I didn't have any ramifications. But my first major case working on with the Warrens is what I'm actually writing about now as a full-length novel. And it's the one that I have the audio recording of, that I play at the conventions that I lecture at, because you get to hear Ed and Lorraine in the distance, and well, not in the distance, they're right there around the table as this activity is taking place. But working with them, Lorraine was always very, very, in fact, this is the perfect time to tell you this. She was always very concerned about the safety of the investigators. In fact, this whole case almost didn't take place because, backing up a bit, they told us about this case. They said this family has fled the house in terror up in Vermont, and there's a spirit of a very dark presence there. There's also the spirit of a woman who had lost her life as she was being rushed by horse and wagon to the midwife who was waiting for her at the house to deliver her baby. And in their haste to get to the house, the wagon flipped and their bodies got mangled. And there she has been haunting the house and the property. So I offered to drive. My mom had a brand new Dodge Caravan, and I offered, being the youngest, most enthusiastic team member, I offered to drive. And I got in the van that morning, and before I started the car, I put my hands on the steering wheel and I closed my eyes, and I had done something I had never done before, but it's something I do every day now. As I said, I washed this van in the blood of Jesus Christ, that we are protected, right, on our journey, that we arrive safely and we return safely in Jesus' name. Amen. And I said, that was strange, right? Something guided me to do that. And I got onto the Merritt Parkway, which is a beautiful 2-lane road, or 4-lane parkway, 2 lanes north, 2 lanes south, separated by a grassy median and trees and so forth. And I'm heading up that parkway toward Monroe to pick up the Warrens. And I look in my rearview mirror, and I'm the only one on the road going northbound. And there's a car racing up behind me. And I said, okay, I'm in Westport. It's going to be probably a Porsche or something like that. And he's going to blow by me. And he didn't blow by me, but the car raced up, and then literally he just stopped short. And then it was matching my speed. I'm like, what the heck, right? Is he playing games with me? I'm in a caravan, And I thought it was really bizarre. And I would speed up a bit, and we would match speeds no matter what I did. And then literally before my eyes, as I'm watching, this car leapt a car lane ahead of me, a full car length ahead of me. And there it remained. And then before my eyes, it started vibrating, and then started shaking, right? And then started wobbling and fishtailing, right? Left, right, and then right into my lane, 90-degree angle, and I hit the brakes and I slammed right into him. And I got out. I was unharmed, thankfully, and I got out and asked him what the heck happened. And he's all stunned, and he said, it's like I had solid ice, and the state police came and they, reviewed the scene, and they said there's no ice. That he got the ticket, thankfully, because he went into my lane. But he said it's like I hit solid ice, and there were no cell phones in 1990, so I knew there was a payphone off of exit 44 in Fairfield. So as soon as I got there, it was 45 minutes late at this point. I called using the payphone, and I called Lorraine, and I said, I'm very sorry, Lorraine, I was involved in a car accident. And there was a pause, and she said, tell me exactly what happened. And I did. And I hear another pause, and you hear she and Ed talking in the background. And she asked, are you still willing to come? And I said, yeah, the van's drivable. I'm very anxious to go and, be a part of this case. I'll be there in 20 minutes. And she said, okay, come in the house as soon as you get here. And I pulled in, and I think Zaphis is looking at his watch like I'd slept in, trying to make fun of the newest guy. And walked inside, and they're all having coffee outside waiting for me. And because I was going to be the main, bringing the Warrens and 3 other people, including myself, and then another car was going to tag behind. But I walked inside, and Lorraine's just sizing me up and looking at me and so forth, and Ed's studying me, and she's again asked, are you still willing to go? And I said, yeah, I'm fine, let's go. And Ed smacked me on the shoulder, says, see, Lorraine, I told you he's tough. And he cracked jokes all the time, but it's to raise the levity, raise the vibration, right? Yeah. And so we all went, and that was the most amazing first case, because it's the case that I worked on with both Ed and Lorraine, and to be around them. But it was also my first deeply profound psychic experience that affected me in a very emotional way. And we can get into that. We can get into other things. I don't know how you like to go.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Yeah.
All right. So we get up to Vermont and turn on the heat. This is November 30th, I believe. Turn on the heat. And there was a full moon that night, both of which are doing what? They're lending energy to
Yep.
whatever energies are there. And so we turned on the heat. We surveyed the house and the property, went out back into the fields where this tragedy took place. And we stood by the memorial where the bodies were buried of the mother and baby. And we were in the field snapping photos and so forth. And everybody decided we'd go back to the house. We were going to go get some lunch and then come back. And I felt like she was standing behind me. That was the last person in the group to go back. We're in this big cornfield that was, cut down. And I turned around and I said, "Come back to the house with us." Right? Feeling like she was watching. And to her, he could see me. Right? So I made a connection with her. I couldn't see her, but I felt her. You know, when you turn
Right.
around and somebody's
Yep.
looking at you. Anyway, that was a connection that I made with her that I didn't realize, and I didn't tell anybody about it. So we went back to the house after we had lunch, and where basically Ed wants to initiate contact and find out what we're dealing with, power level wise. And so we were all sitting around this big table, and people were walking around doing video and photos. And Ed puts his tape recorder on the table and sets up his microphone, and I'm sitting. It goes to his to his right. Anyway, but he wants to have the table lift, right? Lift. He wanted to see what we're dealing with, and the table, just like the car, starts to vibrate, starts to wobble,
Mm-hmm.
right? Starts to literally lift off the ground and bang on all four. Boom, 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 boom. This is all in the audio. And Joe Hayjack's like, "It's coming, it's coming." He's screaming, freaking out, completely freaking out. And then it stops, right? And then you hear Lorraine say it's using all of its energy, right? And then it starts to pick up again where it's starting to wobble. And I go, "Lorraine, this is sadness," and literally bawled my eyes out in front of everybody. I could not maintain my composure. Tears just streamed down my face. I was so overcome by grief.
Mm-hmm.
You can't even imagine. And that was the grief that this woman, Priscilla, was feeling because she had lost her child. She was on the way to go give birth, and the accident caused her body to get mangled along with the baby's body. But her last conscious thought was get to the house. So there she's
Yep.
remained, right? "Where's my baby? Where's my baby? Help me find my baby." In anguish. I can't imagine the anguish a woman would feel. I mean, we could try to understand as men, but incredible. Anyway, so that's what I picked up. And several other people picked up the anguish too. The fascinating thing is, though, as this table's bouncing all over the place, everybody was experiencing something completely different. They were feeling like the table was coming toward them,
Okay.
right? And the things on the table were being pushed toward them. Um, when they're actually were talking about it afterwards, we're all explaining, "No, it was going toward you, and we were trying to hold on to it." Now, physically, the table can't be going in all directions at the same time, but metaphysically, it can be going in all places simultaneously because everything is frequency and vibration. But Drew Thompson, my friend, the psychic medium, he was literally leaning backwards in his chair at a 90-degree angle where he should have fallen over. And he
Right.
was just laying backwards, and he was freaking out. Like, I think he was going into tongues. I can't remember, but it was insanity what happened during this thing, and then discussing it afterwards, and then splitting up and going to different parts of the house to try to witness. Oh, and Ed said that wasn't the human spirit, right? And I was like, "What? That wasn't a human spirit?" And I said, "Oh no, don't tell me that," because I was overcome by this fear, by this
Right.
sadness. But that began the whole thing, and that turned out to be empathy. And Lorraine later in when I was sitting alone in the living room, because I was feeling her, right? Sadness. And I was feeling like she was standing there, and Lorraine spotted her standing next to me, trying to communicate with me. But I was, we can only see visible light, right?
Yep.
Which is 1% of everything around us. So we're oblivious to the spirits, and we're oblivious to the spirit world, unless you're a genuine medium or psychic, or you're a cat or you're a dog who can see more than that 1%. They can see better than we can. We're blind in these bodies. But she said, "That's empathy, honey. That's a very special gift." And I said, I would have loved to have seen her, because at the time, before the table started moving, Ed spotted this, or Lorraine spotted this very tall black man, black shadowy form with a top hat, and this woman in white who turned out to be Priscilla. And Drew was seeing the same things. It was like, I want to see, but I picked up the emotions, and that changed my life completely, because I got to feel the grief that this woman felt. Seeing her would have been really great, but to
Mhm.
feel what she's going through, just like, because that's what I felt when I read The Demonologist. I was feeling for these poor families undergoing these horrors, especially the children. And I wanted to help. And that was the whole thing. And this was the perfect synchronicity for me to feel what they were going through. To see would have been cool. I'd love to be able to see and feel, but I didn't get to see it. And that's
Sure.
clairvoyance, and I didn't have that ability. And again, I'll reflect back on what Lorraine said. The more you're involved in cases of this nature, the more sensitivities will increase. But so she almost called that entire case off before we even left, because they realized something took control of that car and flung it into my lane. Now, if I hadn't blessed that car, I'll go back. So when we were all standing outside before we left, Ed was explaining, I'm sure you all are well aware that our newest member of the New England Society for Psychic Research was late picking us up on his first case, and people are chuckling because he's trying to make everybody laugh.
Yeah.
But something very serious happened, and Jason was involved in an accident, and this car was flung into his lane. But tell us what you did, before you ever started out on the road. And I explained that I prayed over the car, and I felt the impulse to do that. And he asked, why do you think you did that? And I said, I don't know, but I'm really happy that I did, because if I hadn't, now, whether that was my spirit guides or the angels or Jesus or God or whatever, there
Right.
was a higher power that told me to vocalize my prayer, not just do it silently, right?
Mhm.
But if I had not, maybe my van could have been seized control of and flung right off the road, and I could have been, really badly injured or killed, you
Yeah.
know. So then when they realized that power level, that something took control of this was a black BMW that they took control of, and it colors frequency. So black is a very low frequency, easier
Yeah.
for them to manipulate, I believe. Uh, but they realize that we can all be putting ourselves in grave danger, even by deciding to start driving up there in our own cars, because what if they're seized control of? But while we're at this event, at this case, things started getting really hairy. People were being pushed, right? Literally like shoved, not shoved so they would fall down the stairs, but shoved like get out type of thing.
Right.
And that's when Lorraine decided to call it off, because she realized, this could get really, really dangerous really fast. And she was saying no amount of, evidence or investigation is worth anybody getting hurt. That's the main thing about Lorraine I can always say, is that she has such a kind heart, and that she, uh, was very, very concerned about everybody. And she always said, no drinking, right? No
Yep.
drugs, no pharmaceutical drugs, no drugs. You have to be in a positive state of mind. That you can't be suffering any kind of negativity or anxiety or stress, right? Emotionally, you have to be on a level, even keel, right? Emotionally, physically, you need to be in shape. You need to be energized, because any number of these things, mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, if you have no spiritual faith, the first question she asked me is, how strong is your faith? Because if you don't have strong faith, you can't be part of this group, because that'll bring everybody down, because
Right.
you have no spiritual defenses whatsoever, right? All these things are very, very, very important and crucial, especially working with the Warrens. But anybody who's an investigator, that's my first bit of advice to you, is make sure you have incredible faith in God, right? That God is with you and can and will protect you, and that you have the power and the right and the authority to call upon God for protection. They need to be invited in. The angels need to be invited in, right? Just like the demons need to be invited in through the use of a Ouija board or necromancy and things like that. We have free will. We're free will beings in a free will universe. You have to reach out and call out. I use Archangel Michael all the time, call for protection from him. But it's so very important to make sure that you are, you know, completely fine. Drinking and drug use make your auric field porous, and these things can move right in. So people who don't believe that, there's a phenomenal field of study called, by Dr. Edith Fiore, called the Unquiet Dead. And if you want to understand how demonic spirits possess people, it's more important to understand how earthbound human spirits can possess people, which happens all the time, and nobody's even aware of it. It's called human spirit cohabitation. And she's a psychotherapist, hypnotic regression therapist, and a colleague of Dr. Raymond Moody's Life After Life, right? And she discovered this quite by accident when there was a 21-year-old young man who came to her as a patient, because his mother brought him in because his personality had completely changed after he went to a bar the first time when he reached the age of 21 years of age. And he went to that bar by himself, and he had the idea in his mind, I want to have an old timers drink, like
Right.
this drink, right? And the bartender was like, well, that's weird, you being your 21-year-old. And he gave him one or two or three, and he made it home safely, thankfully. And he woke up in the morning. His eyesight was diminished. He had back pain. He was grouchy and irritable, stiff. He asked his mother for something for breakfast that he never in a million years would have asked for. And he didn't like the things that she normally made for him. And his personality had literally changed before her eyes until the point where she was like, later in the week, who are you? Where's my son? So she brought him to this regression therapist who put him under, and she discovered that not only did she hypnotize him very easily, but she also hypnotized the spirit of the elderly man that he picked up in the bar
Oh, wow.
that gave him the thought in the first place to get that old timers drink because that's what he desired, right? And he had drinks, which made his auric field very porous and made leaks and breaks, and he moves in, he's alive again, right? So he's the one asking mom for the things for breakfast that he desires. And the young man, can't differentiate his thoughts from the old man's, or his consciousness is pushed aside because this was a dominating consciousness that took control, right? Or he's just not, or only subtly aware of what's going on. So this opened this huge field of study called human spirit cohabitation. So a single administration of anesthesia in the hospital as a young boy getting your tonsils out can knock you completely out and allow somebody who'd passed away inside the hospital. So an old woman passes away in the hospital, and she's lurking around and walking the hallways and so forth, and sees this precious boy, and they can see the astral body, and they can see the auric field and see that there's an opening there. And she may not even, have expected to be able to move into him, but she came closer, and then she's inside the spacesuit. That's what the human body is. And all of a sudden she's alive again, right? And she gets to experience still being alive. They don't even know they're dead because there's no such thing as death, right? The spacesuit fails and our body moves off. And most people cross over through the light, but many people are afraid to. And they're afraid because they think they can't get their addictions, whether it's gambling or sex or booze or alcohol, right? Or whatever, unfinished business, fear of facing loved ones who maybe have been abusive, right? Or ashamed to face their loved ones because they think they did unspeakable things during their lifetime, they didn't want to have to fess up to, or that they'd be judged and thrown into the lake of fire. All these things are very potent deterrents to go through. But anyway, the fascinating thing is that people can be cohabitated by 50 or more human spirits. And she's convinced after 30,000 subjects in her career that every case of split personality, multiple personality, bisexuality, homosexuality is caused by the earthbound human spirit of the opposite gender, whether they're young children or old people, or no matter which whether they're male or female. I don't like to use the whole gender stuff because I think it's nonsense. They were during their lifetime, and how those desires, what age they are when they pass, and all those things come into play with regard to what type of experiences they seek out while dominating the body that they've taken over, right? And that every case of schizophrenia, absent true psychosis, oh, thank you, Sarah. Every case of true psychosis in these insane asylums are caused by these people are untrained mediums, and they're getting glimpses of the lower astral plane, and they're being, branded as insane people, but really they're being, all they need to do is shut that ability down through the help of somebody who can help them do that, and for these earthbound spirits to be removed. Now, she says most often the patient is never the one that actually comes in with the problem. The patient is the possessing discarnate spirit who's lost. They're completely lost. They don't realize the damage that they're doing to the person and the body they're not damaging the body, but they are if they're causing destructive behaviors, right? But most don't even realize they're causing the harm that they're causing, because they still feel alive. They still think it's their body. But you'll have a very compassionate dialogue with them and help them understand, look, you're invading this person's life. This person came here to experience their own set of experiences for their own soul evolution, and you're completely coming in as an invading spirit taking over. I never knew I was doing that. I'm so sorry. Can I go now? And they'll go. And there are others who are actually very, very serious about causing harm to the person that they're cohabitating. But it's so fascinating. But so I'm going to give you an example about this. So when I got home, when we decided to leave for the night at that case in Vermont, boom, tears streamed down my face, sadness like you couldn't believe. And it happened again when we got in the car, because I was driving, and 3 times during the ride home. Turn on the dome light, tears just streaming down my face. I'm sobbing, right? And there were white lighting being praying over me and so forth, because I was still connected to this woman, Priscilla. And when I got home the next day, I wrote a newspaper column called Hauntings for the Sacred Heart University Spectrum College newspaper about my cases that I was investigating with and for the Warrens, because it was a Catholic university and everybody wanted to know what's going on with the cases, because I had an inside perspective, right? So I'm writing about the case for this is Sunday, and for my column, and I pick up the phone. Hey, Lorraine, it's Jason. I just wanted to say thank you for bringing me in, and for taking me, for allowing me to come on that case. So amazing. And when are we going back? Right? She said, Jason, we haven't even unpacked yet. We'll see you tomorrow night. And I said, okay, I'm just excited. Thanks again. And blah, blah, blah. And hung up, right? And I'm type. Literally like a minute later, dial on the phone. Lorraine, I really strongly feel like we need to go back there immediately. Right? I said, Jason, we don't have permission to return. We don't know how to get a hold of the family. We haven't gone over the evidence yet. We don't really know what we're dealing with. We're going to go over that on class on Monday. And I said, okay, I don't know why I called you back. I'm just very excited for some reason. I'll see you tomorrow night. Bye-bye. Sorry to bother you. All right. Good night. A minute later, right? I really, really, really strongly feel like we need to go there like right now. Right. She said, Jason, are you writing about this for your column? I said, yeah, you're drawing her right to you. And she's the one tugging on your shoulder sleeve going, call Lorraine, call Lorraine. So that's how easy, right? We can be manipulated by an earthbound human spirit, and we don't even know it's not our own thoughts. So think about that. Really think about that. And the number one cause number one identifier for earthbound human spirit cohabitation is that was so unlike me. I would never do something like that, right? Now, what if it was something that could be turned into a crime, right? A completely being taken over and doing something completely out of character, and then you're screwed,
Right.
if it's a criminal thing. Think about that. How, people say, well, that wasn't like him at all. I couldn't believe, he would viciously attack somebody like that, or that he would never do that. He, never hurt anybody. And do I feel that happens when somebody astral travels? I don't know, because I've never astrally traveled, and I really wish I could. I tried to do that, do astral projection when I was like 19. I had the tapes, cassette tapes, and listened to them and tried to really, slow everything down and actually try to vacate my body, because how amazing would that be? I studied near-death experiences, thousands of cases of those, right? And how cool is that when people leave their bodies and they're able to perceive things that we can't perceive when we're in the bodies, because we can only see the 1%. And I always say, if I ever was able to do that, I would never come back, because there's so much I would want to go see and explore.
Exactly.
Why to be stuck in this boring ho-hum body, ho-hum life? I don't know the answer to that question. So, no, I think that the body is protected. At least I've read that when the silver cord is connected, because you're astrally traveling, you're not actually. I've read and I've studied under Dolores Cannon. I took Dolores Cannon's QHHT, hypnotic regression training, quantum healing hypnosis therapy, that the cord does not get severed unless you actually enter that portal of light, and that's when it's like burned away, and then it's completely cut off, and you can never get back to your body and inhabit it again. But I think when you're connected to the cord, you're better protected. I would suggest that anybody who tries astral projection, or even anybody who goes to sleep at night, to visualize a white pyramid of light coming down over the bed, right? Shimmering and shining, and knowing this is the ultimate protection that nothing can breach. And it's underneath the bed and it's above it and be on all four sides. Pray for protection. Thank you, Archangel Michael, for being here with me now, for drawing your sword, for severing any connections I've made with any spirits during my travels, for closing any doorways I've opened through the use of a Ouija board or occult practices at any time in my life, right? And for sealing those permanently, for sending a legion of holy warrior angels to guide and protect me as my body sleeps and as I travel. I definitely believe we travel and we leave the body and we go explore, because the body needs sleep, but the soul doesn't. So it's not just going to wait around and go, oh my God, when's the body going to wake up? They said we can go and experience a full lifetime worth of experiences in the 8 hours that the body's sleeping, because there's no time or space outside of the third dimension. And that all gets into really trippy stuff too. But there's so much we don't know, but it's so easy. If you really want to understand human spirit phenomena, just read about near-death experiences, read about, pick up Dolores Cannon's books, about all of the cases of hypnotic regression that she's done throughout 30 years or so, or more. Amazing work. But back to this Vermont case, I'm now writing a full-length novel about it. So after Vermont, we worked on many other cases, and then I transferred out to Eastern Washington State University, because that was a very inexpensive creative writing school there, and other reasons. But I went out there, and they got wind that I wrote the newspaper column Hauntings at Sacred Heart. So they asked if I would write it for the Easterner, and I said, sure. And then I said, well, let's fly the Warrens out to do their college lecture, because that's their big thing. This is pre any of these TV shows, but remind you, right? So this was 91, and they flew out to do their lectures. And Lorraine actually called me to investigate. Oh, sorry. So we did their event. We had them back to my fraternity house, because I was president of my house at the time. And I got to, have them over and threw a party for them in a private, group meet and greet. And then we investigated local haunts on campus. One dorm in particular, where several female students had killed themselves over the years. And then around Spokane, there was a cemetery called 10,000 Steps Cemetery. And Lorraine thought that was fascinating. But after they left, Lorraine called me to investigate a case on their behalf in Idaho, which was just, east about 30 minutes. And that was amazing. I'm writing a full-length novel about that. We had actually had a satellite uplink with Ed and Lorraine in New York, and it was supposed to be me and the family through Seattle station, but instead it was the husband and wife and one of their daughters, and I was excluded from that video interview, but she mentioned me as being the lead investigator and so forth. But it is what it is, But I'm writing a full-length novel about that. After they left, there was such a huge interest on campus about the bathroom case, about my work with the Warrens, the newspaper column, and all my experience. I decided I would create the Northwest Society for Paranormal Research to mirror the New England Society for Psychic Research, just because, so I can teach people what I learned, from the very earliest days I was studying these things all the way through the Warrens. I had about 30 people, students from campus in Spokane, residents and so forth. Even people came in from further away, and then had guest speakers and amazing people. I befriended amazing people in Washington, and had amazing experiences. And then graduated school, went back home to Connecticut in 93, and put an ad in the paper for a seminar I wanted to create, and called Transcendence. And I was contacted by this very distraught woman who was literally sobbing on the phone, and so relieved to finally get a hold of me, telling me about the horrors that are taking place inside their house. And I knew, based upon what she was telling me and the answers to my questions, that they were dealing with something very, very dangerous and very serious.
Right.
And so that's how I became involved in this case that I call Dark Siege, a Connecticut Family's Nightmare. You can't see that well. It's on the screen. Anyway, the family was never going to talk about this case, because it, like most of the other cases that are very, very, very severe, people never hear about, because the people are absolutely terrified of a return right? Giving it the wrong recognition and so forth. Or the case like the Smurls in Pennsylvania, right? They thought they would get help by reaching out to the community. Instead, they got ridiculed and scorned. The kids' lives were destroyed because their fellow students were just outrageous. People driving by the house all day, all night, trying to get a glimpse of something, and just turned it into a circus. And it was a nightmare beyond nightmares. So this was in '93, and it was the most terrifying case of my career. And it involved possession and demonic infestation, oppression, possession, exorcism. And then these spirits came back after this family with a vengeance. And Ed called it the most devastating case of diabolical retribution we've experienced on record. And this was my case. That's why it hasn't been shown in the Conjuring universe type of stuff yet. I have the screenplay being written right now. It's in its second draft, second revision. But this is my case. And Ed helped me on this. And it was mind-blowing, the stuff that took place to this family. And it started with an earthbound human spirit following a 6-year-old girl home from the cemetery. Nobody believed her, right? Because she's 6 and her eyes are playing tricks on her. And then the 16-year-old brother and his 2 best friends realized that Kelly was telling the truth. And they ran to buy a Ouija board at the Trumbull Mall. And they opened the floodgates because they challenged that, not only that spirit that they knew was lurking in the house, but any other spirits, right?
Right.
Come mess with me, you expletive. What are you after my little sister for, you big expletive? And 8 different intelligences came through that evening. They rang the doorbell one after the other, right? They're looking over through the bedroom window and there's nobody outside on the landing. And that's when it all began. And it was a nightmare like you can't believe. And I finally basically got permission to write about it in 2012. They said, if you can spare one family from the nightmare that we went through, especially little Kelly, we want nothing to do with it, understandably, because they came after them a second time with a vengeance. But you have to warn people not to make the same mistakes that my children made and that we made as the adults, because nobody was communicating with each other. Kelly was seeing spirits the whole time, not telling anybody, so that's not included. The boys were embarrassed that they used a Ouija board, realizing that they actually started this chain reaction. The older sister didn't want to admit that they, routed her brother. The mother, Linda, didn't dare tell her husband, who was the alpha of the family, who'd be the last person to believe in ghosts and would give her nothing but ridicule. She confided in her best friend. They didn't know who to reach out to. They had no idea who the Warrens were. They lived in their same town. They had no idea who the Warrens were. Right. There was no TV shows, right? They didn't dare tell anybody, who are we going to find to help us? And they actually found my newspaper ad when they're out having lunch, desperate for help. At the same time, the family friend, her best friend, found a flyer for a psychic fair in Stratford, right? And realized that she might be able to find help there. And that's what happened simultaneously. That's how we got involved with it. But they would have been completely destroyed if they didn't get help, because these spirits, here's the fascinating thing, just like the spirits in Vermont knew that we were setting out to go intervene, right? And cause the car calamity to take place. For those of you that just joined us, I was driving the car up to my mother's brand new caravan to go pick up Ed and Lorraine Warren and several other investigators up to go to a case in Vermont. And a nearby car was literally seized control of and whipped into my lane, causing us to collide. And it was mind-blowing. But Lorraine almost called the entire case off because of this. Anyway, you got to listen to the replay. Where was I going with that? In that they know in advance, and Ed always said this, especially in the Demonologist and other books, they know in advance who the investigators are going to be before the investigators ever even become aware of the case. Because these beings exist outside of time and space. They know your past, your present, and your future. They can walk through centuries. They can walk through time. Hey, Mary. They know these things, and they know they can try to make you sick. They can try to make you full of anxiety or fear and prevent you from getting involved in the first place, because that will make things easier for them. They don't want you to reach the family that they're trying to destroy. So when they knew that they found me, not that I'm anybody special by any means, but I knew the Warrens, right? And I knew, the bishop, and so forth. And I know other very important, not important, very experienced investigators, who have the knowledge and the know-how to understand these things better, even better than I, of course, because I was new. But I had a lot of experience for somebody my age. They know who the investigators are. They know how who they're going to call for help, and they
Yep.
know that the jig is up. So then the attacks commence. They intensify to the point where they're trying to destroy everybody all at once, even the man of the house that they're trying to avoid completely. They'll always go after the weakest link. And Archbishop James McLeod is a friend of mine. Hey, Mary. And he was a guest speaker at my Defeating the Demonic event last July. And he said, you have to understand what these demons, see when they look at you and me, right? It's tantamount to them being the lioness on the Serengeti, and that we're the wildebeests, right? And they're just looking over the line of grass, and they're checking everybody out. They're saying, oh, that one's old, that one's sick, that one's strong. I'm going to avoid him. I'm going to go after the easy prey because it costs energy to go and attack somebody. So they go after the weakest link first. The person delving into drugs, the person drinking, the black sheep of the family, the person getting into the occult, witchcraft and black magic and necromancy and tarot and Ouija, especially because it's invitation, evocation. They go after those people, and then they save the strong people for last because they try to turn the whole family against each other. So that's a classic, right? They'll try to split up friendships. They'll cause you to hear things, just like these earthbound human spirits can cause you to do things, right? When they're cohabitating your body that you would never do. That wasn't me. What the hell did I just do? They can cause you to say things. These demonic spirits you can have a conversation. We could have a conversation, Russell, together right now, or we could have had one when we were backstage before the show started. And you can hear something come out of my lips that you find so offensive, you almost you cancel the whole show. And I would never have said such a thing, but in your mind, you will hear it, right? Believe it, right? And here's an example: is the Stark Siege case? Is that when the family fled because it was too terrible going on in the house, they had to go stay in a hotel. Can you imagine having to leave your house, your own fortress of solitude, and flee because it's loaded with horrific events taking place? They went to the hotel, and in the morning, Matt, the father, was looking for the $50 bill to pay for the room. And he couldn't find it. And he was freaking out and screaming, like becoming berserk, right? Something completely out of character, right? And then he had the idea to look in his son's book bag, which was hanging on the doorknob of the main door. And he's like, Dad. And the wife's going, Matt, you honestly think that, the money would be in Tyler's book bag? And he's like, Dad, that's my property. And he's zipping it up, and he's like almost destroying the thing. That's much rage. And he unzips the zipper and then unzips the zipper and sit in there. And lo and behold, there's a $50 bill folded in half. And he goes, then what's this? Right? And backhands his son, the 16-year-old son, and literally he goes flying back into the headboard. And everybody's going berserk over this because that's what they're trying to do. Of course, his son didn't steal the money, but they moved the money into his bag to cause father to turn against son, right? And that's how the chain reaction goes. You know this, right?
Yep.
So it's just for the audience. This is how these evil bastards work. They don't fight fair, and they try to turn everybody against each other. There were so many examples of them trying to turn everybody against each other in this case. So what I did is, the family was never going to talk about it, right? And in 2012, we learned that there are all these paranormal groups. First of all, I'd worked with Ed and Lorraine Warren since I was a 20-year-old man right out of the gate, right? And I was like, I worked with the pioneers of the whole modern paranormal investigation movement, at least in North America. And, I went out, just, I wasn't doing this full time, up for the last several decades. It was just, that's how it all began. But I was like, now there are all these 10,000 paranormal teams out there. And it turns out that there's a certain number of them that were using Ouija boards inside people's homes when they're claiming to be professionals helping them out of their troubles. And we all know Ed Warren, my mentor and teacher, said the Ouija is the most dangerous piece of negative occult paraphernalia in existence, responsible for over 90% of all the cases of demonic infestation, oppression that lead to possession, require exorcism he's ever been involved with, right? So I called the woman. I changed everybody's names and so forth, so that nothing would come after them a third time, because the second time was 10 times worse, as it always is. And I told her this. She says, my God, if you could spare one family from the nightmare that we went through, especially little Kelly, then change our likenesses so that nothing comes after us again. Please, for the love of God, only if you could guarantee that nothing's going to come back after us again, we'll do it. And thankfully nothing's happened. And I did a great deal of prayer and protection and all that stuff as I'm recreating it. So I used my bachelor's in English creative writing to recreate this entire case in a cinematic, I call it a cinematic true crime horror fiction format, like Stephen King book, because I had to recreate everything that they went through from the first moment they drove by the cemetery, right, all the way until the point where they called me. And then I wrote myself in as my own character by name. And I recreated the whole thing that way. So you cannot put the thing down. You read it. I have over 440 reviews now, I believe, on Amazon. I've sold over 10,000 copies of my books, ebooks and audiobooks and paperbacks and things like that. But you can't put it down, and you can't read it at night without every light on in the house, because it's absolutely terrifying. Even
Right.
Bishop James Long, he's a huge supporter of my work. He's a great friend.
Oh
He
yeah, I
made
know Bishop James Long.
he made my books required reading for his demonology course, and he plugs my books. He got me on Coast to Coast the first time. In fact, he was on Coast to Coast plugging my books, and Connie Willis was the guest host. She's like, nobody plugs other people's books. Like, if you want to understand theology and demonology, you've got to read Jason's books, right? So, that's when I was in Salem selling my books for the whole month there, and it was skyrocketed. But #1 bestseller in like all 3 listing categories, and like for like 3 months straight, and then jockeying up and down between the first and third, bestseller. They just put so much time into promoting it online. But never use the name, Stephen, in my experience. You never want to use a name or call a name or pronounce a name, because you can draw this entity at you. That's my experience. Take it for what it is. But it's been a huge success. And then in 2014, I wanted to recreate what happened when they came back after them with a vengeance, diabolical retribution in this case. The first book separated into 4 sections: infestation chapters, which are the first 10, when the whole first case started and these spirits invade the house; oppression, when they start going after the family members; and then possession, when they succeed in possessing somebody; and then the exorcism and so forth. But then I added something completely unique, which is a detailed chapter by chapter analysis explaining everything we've talked about today. My experiences in the past, how I became involved with the Warrens, my first several cases, my understanding about the science and spirituality behind the paranormal, why Ouija boards should be avoided and how they work through sympathetic vibratory physics, and the laws of intention and free will, how to protect yourself, how to raise your vibration, how to use suffumigation, which is my specialty, which is high church incense and prayer and holy blessed candles and so forth, to clear your space and to keep your energy levels high, and how to call protection from Archangel Michael and from Christ and so forth. So that's been a huge, huge bonus for people, because they weren't expecting to have an armchair discussion at the end. So I wrote volume 2, and I sent the entire PDF to Bishop Long, and I said, I'm really hesitant to include the incubus and succubus attacks, because I write like you're right there experiencing everything, and who wants to experience a demonic rape from a being that hates you with every fiber of his existence?
Right.
And he read it, and he said, you have to include this, because people need to know how serious this is, rare but serious, and that they need to seek help from clergy immediately. It's not something to dilly-dally with, right? Because that's the most devastating type of attack there is, because they're stealing your vital life force energy, especially if you're a virgin at the time, right? They want that vital life force energy for themselves. They want to steal it. They're thieves. They're robber. They rob, steal, and destroy. That's their MO. But he said you have to include it, and I did. And I had to sell that as an 18 and up volume number 2, The Nightmare Returns, Dark Siege 2, The Nightmare Returns. And I hate having to sell 2 books. I'm in the process of merging both into one volume. Because I want to just have one volume for people to get and so forth. I also have the graphic novel in production, which is really great. I have a phenomenal artist friend of mine in Australia named Corinne. And doing incredible artwork for it. So we're trying to make, I have the audiobook in my own voice on audible.com. This is the most terrifying, mind-bending case, most fascinating case of my career, and nobody was ever going to hear about it.
Right.
That's the funny thing. And, the case with the Warrens and so forth, I'm writing about that. And the case they had me investigate in Idaho on their behalf, I'm writing about that. But yeah, we do need spiritual warfare awareness. My friends, Bishop James Long, Archbishop Ronald File Enright, Archbishop James McLeod, Reverend Bill Bean, they were all the guest speakers at my original Defeating the Demonic event. And, Archbishop Enright has his classes online for free for people to learn how to become a demonic profiler, how to join his Sacred Order of the St. Michael organization. He gives it away for free as long as nobody steals it and plagiarizes it and uses it for their own self. I guess a certain bishop did, a certain woman calling herself a bishop did, when she's not. And I don't want to mention any names, but this really gets me. But there's many churches, the majority of churches that don't have any kind of ministry of deliverance ministry or exorcism, because either they don't believe in it, which is a mind. I remember Ed, he would meet a new priest, and Ed Warren, he would meet a new priest and say, "Are you a real priest or a fake priest?" And they'd be like, "What? How dare you? What are you talking about? Do you believe in God? Of course. Do you believe in the devil? Oh, well,
Right.
And he's like, bye, And there's so many that don't believe in it, and there's so many who are terrified of it, right? How much faith do you have if you're a pastor or a minister and you're up there talking to people about, God, and you don't have the faith to understand that you have the power to call for protection of Archangel Michael and Jesus Christ, and that you can do this, So anyway, it boggles my mind. I put on this amazing event called Defeating the Demonic last July and this past October, and reached out to hundreds of churches and so forth for them to make their congregations and parishes aware that this is an amazing pivotal event, because it features real exorcists and real demonologists,
Right.
to show the reality behind these cases and my work with the Warrens. But these lifelong careers, like Archbishop Enright's been an exorcist for 46 years, the man's incredible, and Bishop Long is incredible, and Bill Bean is this powerhouse of a deliverance minister. And Archbishop McLeod is a mental health professional and a family counselor and an archbishop and an exorcist. And they were my guest speakers last year, and it's unbelievable. How many churches do you think replied? Out of 100 churches that I reached out to the first go around, even bothered to reply?
Probably about 20 or 30. Oh, wow.
None. And Bill said these churches have become dens of iniquity. They become corporations. They don't care. They just want to have entertainment and, fill the collection plates, whatever the reason is. It was a terrifying expose on these forces, how they weave their way into our lives, how to protect yourself, how to defeat the demonic, and some people think it's too scary. I don't want to know, but the stuff is real. It's all around us,
Oh,
and that's why I do what I do. And that's why I got involved in the first place way back in 1990, is because I was terrified for people enduring these types of things. And I wanted to know why it's being allowed to happen, right? How to help people. And that's why I started working with the Warren. So I know it's already 10 o'clock. I've talked everybody's ear off, especially yours. So I didn't give you any time at all to ask me anything. So I'll be quiet now.
Oh, you're good. What would you say would be your most terrifying case that you've done? Out of all the cases you've done, would be your worst?
This one,
This one?
Defeating the Demonic, is insanity. So to give you an example, people are like, well, give me an examples. The woman, Linda, who had reached out to me just before we arrived to help her, she's an artist, and she was painting in her art studio right off of the kitchen, because that's how she found peace, right? She's painting a beautiful farm scene, and there's a wheat field and a barn and all that stuff. And all of a sudden she felt the temperature dropped in the room to like the point where the glass was literally crystallizing, right? And she felt this presence behind her, literally seize control of her hand from behind, jam it into the paint. In this case, it was a rich red. She's doing the barn. and thrust it against against this canvas, and says, "Bitch, right? You will all die," right? And then flung her off the easel onto the floor. But that's something that she witnessed. But what was fascinating is that, and there were attacks like that all over the place, like being strangled. Every time she got on a phone call trying to reach myself or somebody else, she would literally be choked, right? Where the boys had used the Ouija board in the living room, when they got home the next day, the board wasn't there anymore, but where they had used it, a pool, they smelled this horrific like smell. And it was a viscous, yellowy, goopy pool of what they called dog urine, right? Or cat urine, or it was just a combination of the two. It was so rank and disgusting. And Tyler ran into the garage to get bath towels that his dad used to wax the cars, and dropped them on the floor and was stepping on them and so forth. Literally, it was like a puddle that would never be diminished. It would be soaked up, one towel after the other. Like, this is nuts. What's going on? Where did this come from and everything? And then in a flash, right, everything is completely bone dry. The carpet is bone dry. There's no smell. There's nothing. The towels are bone dry. And they smelled like car wax again, right? And now that was a mass projection into their minds to do what? To terrorize them and to cause them all the fear that's used against them, right? But that was a big MO for the spirits in this house, is they would cause horrific things to take place that couldn't possibly take place, but they did in the mind's eye. Lorraine always said all hauntings begin in the mind. But just terrible. The most fascinating thing to me, and I actually joked about it when it happened, is that we all heard a big bang, like metal bang. And we didn't know where it came from. We looked on the floor of the kitchen, and there was a mound of rotting, festering, organic gunk on the table. I'm sorry, on the floor. And we found out that it was every bit of organic food stuff, any organic matter that was in the refrigerator and the freezer, because all of the containers were completely empty and like they'd been gone through the washing machine or the dishwasher. They were sparkling clean, but all the stuff that would have been inside them, from the eggs to the ham to the cheese to the popsicles, had been on the floor in a flash, like it had rotted there for a month.
Oh, wow.
Just repulsive and disgusting. And that didn't disappear. So that was actually, all the food was removed from the refrigerator and freezer in an instant. And it is like it's like time had passed by for a month, and it had just been this disgusting, rotting mess where it had to be scooped up. And I made the joke, they really cleaned you out, meaning all the food's gone. I've never seen anything like that before in my life. And that was mind-bending and stuff. The whole thing was crazy. And all because of a chance passing by of a cemetery, and because the kids used the Ouija board, the teenagers used the Ouija board to challenge these spirits, or that earthbound human spirit, which was just a very negative man, earthbound spirit, but all the demonic spirits and entities that came through their invitation, and how hard it was on the family and the horrific things that they endured. And then just when they thought it was all over, they come right back after the psychic who showed them. And she showed, so Yvonne, who's a friend of mine, she's passed now, but she was the psychic that helped in this case. And she was in her kitchen, and she felt, tingles on the top of her head. And she's a psychic, and she says, this is when some form of communication takes place. What's it going to be? And then she saw this vision in her mind. She realized it was something really dark. And then she literally saw in her mind, because it couldn't possibly physically be there, a 9-foot tall, bare-bodied, black fur-bodied, owl-headed, red pulsating eyes, with a beak, with talons, with serpentine tentacle type of thing, fingers, right? Showing her in her mind, vision out, movie, like clip after clip, like a movie, what they're going to do to everybody to punish them for standing against them, right? The neighbor's pet, neighbor's dog, boyfriends, girlfriends, family friend, the family members individually, the clergy, the doctor, right, that was involved in sedating him. And she immediately, picked up the phone and called, the archdiocese and said, we are in, they're back. And they knew that when they come back, it's like Bill Bean says, it's always 7 times 7 worse. I don't know how you quantify that, but it's always so much worse
Right.
when they come back. And it came back, because they gave it the recognition. We warned them not to put it out of your mind. It's done with. It was horrific, but it's over. Right? They're expelled from the house. They're expelled from the person they possessed. Don't give it recognition. Don't fear a return. Look at it like it's a chapter in a book, that the book has been closed. Put it on the shelf and get it out of your mind. And what if it ruins our Christmas? What if I'll never have a girlfriend because she finds out that we were raped by demons?
Right.
Crazy stuff. And this poor family and three of the teenage boys are the ones that. 2 of the 3 got the ones that got those incubus and succubus attacks, and absolutely devastated them. How can you recover from something like that?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, this was the most terrifying case. So I've done 33 conventions this year, 3-day conventions, Friday, Saturdays, and Sunday. Some are just weekends, all over the country, from Vegas all the way to Michigan to Connecticut, everywhere around Chicago. And selling my book, spreading the word, right? Setting up my vendor table, getting the vendor space. Sometimes I get paid to lecture and pay free vendor space and travel and all stuff. And that's great because it really, helps out. So I ordered all these books, and I have extra books because I thought I would sell them all for this year's events, but I didn't. So I want to put together a Christmas bundle for people. I have volume 1 and volume 2. Normally I sell them for $35 a piece, autographed, personalized. I had these amazing shirts made called The Legends. Of course, you can't see it because of my settings, but it's to honor Ed and Lorraine Warren, right? The Legends, because they are, and the back is rest in peace and their memorial and their spirits behind the each side of the memorial. So I want to do some kind of special deal for people where I'll offer a shirt and both books for $60 instead of like $100, which is what I'm selling them for retail. So if anybody was interested in that, just send me an email at darksiegebook@gmail.com and type in Russell, because it's Russell's show. And, I'll try to package this up, because I have sizes from small to XXX, 3X. And, I'll see if it goes. If not, then I'll just hang on to them until next year. But the books are great reads. And the interesting thing about volume 2 is it happens just before Christmas. So it's the perfect Christmassy type of thing. And the first volume takes place just before Halloween. So, it's the perfect seasonal read for Halloween, which is really cool. But I have 2 new books in the works, the audiobooks on audible.com. If you do grab my books, please review them. If you've read them and you're already part of this audience, please review them. I have over 440 reviews, I believe, for volume 1, but I don't even know if I'd be happy with 4,000. I just think that so many people have read them and everybody loves them. It'd just be great. It's just redundant, I guess, and repetitive, because everybody says the same thing. I could not put these books down. I couldn't read it at night with every light on in the house, or I just couldn't bear to read it at night. I had to wait till morning. And some people have suggested that don't read these at night. You will not get a good night's sleep, and you'll be looking under your bed for monsters. And the purpose is not to scare people, but to make them aware how these forces weave their way into our lives, how to protect yourself, right? Everybody has the right to call upon the protection of Archangel Michael, to call for Jesus Christ, right? We are, like Bishop James Long says, you are the living temple of the Holy Spirit, right? And the kingdom of heaven is within, right? And we have that power. We have to exercise our free will to turn away from the darkness, right? And turn toward the light. And it's really free will.
Right. Now, when you come into a house with a demonic presence, and do you find, like we do, roaches and flies, and
Because
they stink, for one?
they're meant to terrorize you and frighten you, right? Archbishop Enright said that he was in a case in San Francisco in a ratty hotel, and he knows they're roach infested, one thing, but literally maggots were falling from the ceiling and landing on his Bible as he's performing the rite, And I wasn't there, I didn't see it, but I believe him because he's a man of credible character. But things like that, yeah, the smells and the feelings of dread,
Mhm.
a weighted heaviness in the place. You just feel, something is off. And because everything is frequency and vibration, these beings are extra low vibrational beings. Even animals are terrified, right? They'll often avoid an area completely
Yeah.
that's demonically infested, and cats and dogs are well aware what's going on. If your cat or your dog is barking or hissing or growling or hiding or running away or cowering from something that you can't perceive, trust me when I say they're perceiving a threat that is terrifying them, and they're trying to protect you, but you'd better pay attention quickly and pray silently if that's the case, because praying aloud can invite an attack upon yourself, but only if you have the faith that that you can call upon that protection. The greatest danger is people going in there who cling, like Bishop Long said, you know, you're not a demonologist until you've actually worked these cases and you're around these entities. You can
Mhm.
read all the books you want, but unless you've actually had firsthand experience or primary experience, you know, you're not qualified to write books about it and talk about it, because you're misleading people, because you're reading what other people are reading,
Exactly.
uh, and then reading what other people who have primary experience have written. Like he said that much more eloquently than I did. I'm not trying to offend anybody, but uh, unless you've been there and experienced it, you really have no idea how awful and dangerous and oppressive this whole situation is. And you can put yourself and everybody else in grave danger if you do the wrong thing or you provoke things, challenging things. Like, you're not provoking something if you say, "You're not so tough, come fuck with me."
Right.
That's challenging that, right?
Yep.
You're inviting that attack. Provoking is when you're praying the litany of saints, the Our Father, the 23rd Psalm, uh, those types of things. You're actually challenging them and provoking them at the same time. And Ed Warren, my teacher, said, "I will never provoke anything in the name of Ed Warren. That would invite an attack upon me." I invoke them. I challenge them in the name of Jesus Christ, and they will run to the hills. That's got to be all evidence that this being is real,
Yep.
right? They don't freak out and run to the hills at the mention of Shiva or Buddha, right? They do freak out when you mention Jesus Christ.
Yep.
Like the sons of Sceva, like Bishop Long says, they thought they can go and cast demons out. And the demon's like, John, I know, and Paul, I know. Who are you? And they go and lash out and attack them. And then you're in deep, deep trouble
Yep.
unless you have somebody like you have Farah to call upon, Deal. I met her many years ago. And I have Bishop Enright. Bill Bean is a huge, a powerful man. Man, I worked on a case with him in upstate New York. He wants me to write about that case, but it's like, give me like another 5 clones and 60 hours in a week, and maybe I can do it. But I'd like to. But I call upon Bill Bean or Archbishop Enright, Archbishop Cloud, Bishop Long. Um, there's Bishop Dr. Joshua Sparks now, who was he was also a guest speaker at my newest Defeating the Demonic event. Very powerful man. Um, and having these people to call upon,
Yep.
if you open the wrong doorway and you stumble upon something that you really don't have any power against, is pretty troublesome. It's troubling that people go out there and actually look for it. The thing is that I had this woman come up to my table and actually was stunned when she told me, "Oh, it looks like you don't think very favorably about demons." And I said, "Well, why would I?" She says, "Oh, well, I've had wonderful experiences with mine." I said, "Oh, and yeah, I reached rock bottom, and I didn't find any, help from Jesus or God, and I made a blood pact with the demon, and everything's been wonderful. My finances have increased, And I was like, "Oh, well, what happens?" Made a blood pact with the demon, right?
Yeah.
Where she pricked her thumb and wrote this whole thing out, and she named this demon. But I said, "I don't even pronounce its name, first of all,
Exactly.
right?" And I said, "What happens when it turns on you?" "Oh, well, it can't, because I put it in writing that it can't harm me or anybody else." It's like, these beings don't give a damn what you write.
Exactly.
They exist outside time and space. These beings are eternal, right? You're nothing. You're a laugh. I didn't say that to her. I was trying to remain kind. Actually, if I asked her if I could actually record that conversation so I could send it to the clergy, I wouldn't post it online. But it's sad, that these people are out there. They're so lost, and they think they're going to find favor in a demonic spirit that hates them. They may give you temporary things, but the bill comes due always.
Oh yeah.
And it's a horrible experience when people get turned on. So please just steer away from these things. I tell people don't get involved in this stuff, and it's like I'm being hypocritical because I was seeking out the answers to the universe too, but I was doing it under the guidance of the most amazing paranormal researchers there were, Ed and Lorraine
Right.
Warren, as their student. I worked alongside both Ed and Lorraine during their prime, 1990. They were totally in their prime at that point, and I couldn't imagine having greater teachers. It's like being a pianist and having Mozart, you know, as your mentor. It's amazing. Anyway, I told you I'd zip my lip and not talk too much. But
That's
if
all
you want to
right.
go find my books, you get Amazon.com or darksiege.com. They're all listed at full price at $35 a piece. But if you contact me and you want a Christmas bundle deal, just email me at darksiegebook@gmail.com. Oh man. But
Carol says it's so sad that people think that they can possibly control something that dark.
yeah.
It is. I mean, like, we got called in to a case in Oklahoma where the guy's mother had called us in because she was worried about her two grandkids living in the home. Their father was doing demonic worship.
Mm.
He had a book on witchcraft and how to sacrifice and kill people. He was using a Buddhist sing bowl for demonic practices. And it turned out to be a pretty bad case. The rest of my team couldn't make it, so my dad and I went out, set up the cameras, initially investigated, and I had to go investigate solo because my dad can't walk too well, so he just watches our cameras, but I stay in camera view at all times so he can see me if something goes on. So, decided to take a break. Everything was kind of quiet, and then all of a sudden, the one camera in the hallway just started sitting there pulsating. And then it got gradually worse, and we kept watching it, and then all of a sudden, this black figure appeared in it. Stood probably about 6 foot tall. So I said to my dad, "I'm gonna go back there, check it out, see what it is." I got back there, and I'm looking at it, and I had my Saint Benedict medal and my crucifix cross right here that's been blessed, and I was just hanging on to it, and it dropped down to like 5 foot tall, come running at me and disappeared at my legs, and I ended up with 3 scratches on my bicep,
Mm.
basically giving me the warning, "Get out of here, or I'm gonna hurt you even more."
Yeah.
But we stayed till the end, did a cleansing and everything on the family, the house. The guy wouldn't take the cleansing because we were using holy water. He said it's against his religion.
What religion was he?
He was worshiping the demonic, he
Oh,
was a Satanist, and ended up reverting back to his old ways. We did a cleansing on his girlfriend. Tried to kill his girlfriend doing about 70 down a highway, choking her, and she jumped out of the vehicle and tore up her whole leg, everything.
yeah. You can't. You know, when people don't follow the guidelines that you set for them to try to help eliminate this stuff or prevent a return or a relapse, there's no hope because they're not willing to change themselves, and it becomes very frustrating. And your dad's the one I met at the Warrens Con, right? You
Yep,
guys came up, yeah. Tell
yep.
him I said hello.
Yeah,
Um,
he's watching.
oh, is he? Hi. Good to see you. I can't see you, but I know you're there in spirit.
But yeah, he works with me. He does cleansings on people. He gets a white light that goes around him when he does cleansings on people. It's an interesting experience to see when he does it. We were at Missouri State Penitentiary here when Nesper had come out with Get Haunted and did the Devil on the Run tour, and they brought some of the artifacts out. Well, this girl had got overcame by darker energy from the objects, and she had Pott's disease on top of it, so she was an easy target.
Mhm.
And they brought her back to the lobby there, and they were going to call the ambulance for her because she was starting to go into shock. Well, my dad got a hold of her hands, started praying with her, did some stuff with her, put some holy water, and this white light went around him, and everybody just looked, and they just couldn't believe this white glow just went around him, and then she was fine for the rest of the night. She lasted for the rest of the whole event.
Good. The power of prayer. When you know about it.
Yep.
Um, April. So what people tell me is, I am, aware of spiritual practices like pranic healing, right, which is very, very powerful and potent. I have two amazing psychic friends who are both female, and I asked them, will you please take a look at so and so and see what you find and see if there's something going on. And often they ask, well, I need their permission to work on them, And the thing is, we're surrounded by spirits and we can't perceive them because we can only see visible light. But you can know that you can feel like there's a presence, and it's dark when you feel an anger settle over you that is not natural. You get easily pissed off, really, you get really, really upset and torqued. And at that point, you just pray for protection for them. Whenever I pass a graveyard, I say, thank you, Archangel Gabriel, for being here now, right? The messenger angel, for taking any earthbound spirits home, to God, who are lurking in the cemetery, if it is their free will choice to go. Everybody has free will. So we have the power and the authority to call for help, but it's always up to their higher self and their conscious mind and their superconscious or subconscious mind, or the higher self that's controlling the conscious mind. They always have the free will choice, whether they want to accept it or not. But people's conscious mind can be unaware that they need help, but their higher self is hoping they seek help and that somebody prays for them. That's why I always says it's so powerful to pray for people for protection, when they don't have the knowledge that they can do so. So is it our right? Are we violating free will? You're violating free will if you seek to harm someone, and I think anybody that goes out of the way to harm somebody has major issues that they're going to need to deal with for going out of their way, especially if somebody is practicing witchcraft and things like that, or voodoo.
Right.
We had a terrible case of voodoo in Australia. I wasn't involved in it, but I was summoned on it, where this woman, this grandmother, was trying to kill her granddaughter using really, really powerful voodoo. And there's nothing that they could do. Even these are very, very powerful psychics. There's nothing they could do to stop it. And through another synchronicity, I was at Parapsychon in Ohio at the State Reformatory as a guest speaker. And one of my friends, Greg Nicholas, he's a psychic, he's a medium. He said, I have to introduce you to my friend. I just feel like I'm guided to introduce you to her. And she was here, visiting me today. And I got to talk with her. And turns out she's an expert in voodoo. At the time when I'm dealing when my friend is so distraught because they feel like this woman's going to die. Right. And I said, oh, well, I just met somebody out of synchronicity. For some reason, people are brought together through me somehow, right? It has nothing to do with me. I'm just the conduit for creator, right?
Mm-hmm.
Being orchestrated to bring people together that can benefit, right? From that knowing of each other. And I put them together, and she had a friend. Even the woman that was put together with me was good, but she actually knew somebody that was even more effective at dealing with this, what was determined to be a hopeless situation, and they resolved it. And all the praying in the world didn't help, and all the Roman Catholic methodology didn't work because this is voodoo.
Yep.
Now, I have people like Bill Bean that says, They just don't have the faith to stop it. If you have this faith to know that God will resolve the situation, he will. But whatever. That didn't work. But this woman who knew how to handle it in her own way did. And it spared this woman's life. So I'm all about, the enemy of my enemy is my friend, right? The enemy of darkness is my friend. And if you have a way with which to save somebody from a life of misery and despair, then I'm all for it, as long as it's not causing anybody harm, do no harm. That's the MO. Help people as best you can and ask God. I said, God, if I can be of service, help me be of service, and it's never about me, it's about God. Right. And we don't cast out demons, and we don't, your father doesn't heal people. It's God through your father that heals people, but, Christ said too, these things and more ye shall do also, with regard to performing miracles and healing the sick, only if you understand that you are permanently connected to God, your creator. The kingdom of heaven is within. If you want to, find the one true path and to follow me, not worship me, but do as I do. Right. Become another Christ. We all have the ability to do that. And that's where this whole message has been completely turned around, where the organized religion turns it into a worship situation, where I believe he came here to set us all free and to show us that we can all do these things. Fish used to a civic demon. No, I don't know that, April. There's so much. I don't know everything. I'm just telling you my story, and I'm nobody special.
That's why we're not professionals. We learn all the time.
Yeah. I've had the privilege and the honor to work both with Ed and Lorraine Warren, when they were both in their prime and alive and with it and functional and all that stuff. And it was amazing. And other people too, but these two are the pioneers of the whole field.
Yep, they are.
And, so many people are trying to emulate them, and, they want to, be of assistance too. But I always tell people, make sure your heart's in the right place, and you're here trying to help people through the power of God and not have any ego whatsoever about it. Because when that happens, then you're not as well protected, right? Because you're becoming egotistical about it instead of being an instrument of Creator, being Christ-like, right? I believe you're going to be finding yourself less and less potent and powerful to the point where you can actually start suffering attacks and things like that. My opinion, from what I've seen. The first question, if you just joined us, is that Lorraine asked me, was how strong is your faith, Jason? Honey. That's the most important question. If you're going to get involved in any of this stuff, you got to learn how to protect yourself. You have to learn how to pray effectively. So praying, oh God, please help me. I'm really suffering, and would you please come help me out of this mess, is very weak, right? Because you're saying, not only do I not believe that I have the right to even call upon you, that you're even hearing me, or that you're going to come and answer my prayer, and if you are, when and in what capacity and how powerful and potent it is going to be, versus saying, thank you, Archangel Michael, for being here now, right? Meaning it's already so, right? Yep. For drawing your sword and for severing any connections I've made with any spirits, throughout any point in my life, for protecting me in all ways, always, right? For sending a legion of holy warrior angels into my home to guard this property, my cars, my pets, my loved ones, my family, my friends, anybody who enters this property, always 24/7, 7 days a week for life, right? And know and believe it's true, because they're waiting to answer your call. They're waiting for us to help, to ask for help. Just like the dark's waiting for us to slip up and say, I want to, do these dark things and so forth, just so they can find a chink in your armor. And, you've cracked the door open, right? And then they're going to come kick the door open. You've made that opening. You want to close that door. And trust me when I tell you that you're not going to gain in the long run. You're not going to gain from these dark spirits if you're thinking you're going to seek their favor because they hate you and they want to destroy you. And they want to, there'll be a price to pay, and some people are willing to go along with that. The whole the stuff that's going to come out about Hollywood and the music industry and all these people that have had all this fame and fortune that have, you ever heard of the Black Eye Club?
Yep.
That's really, really interesting. There's so much stuff. But
Well, that's even like dolls too. A demonic entity is going to inhabit a doll because it's something you enjoy, something you're close to,
it's
something
something
you're going to hold in your body.
you focus your awareness on it and treat it like it's a living being. You know, so it's just wild stuff. But man, I can't believe it's 10:30 already. We can go till about 4 in the morning. You want to do that?
I'm good for it.
Oh
We're
man,
investigators. We don't have a sleep schedule.
yeah. Well, getting older, and wiser. But
Yep. Yeah, I'm in the process now. Also, I'm writing a book. Also,
all right, good.
on my experiences and what I've learned through the years with the demonology, and it'll have some of my cases in it that I've
Yeah.
worked on, some of my bad ones, and my very first one was a lady called us. We got called in, and the hot spot was the actual basement. You could walk down in the basement, and you'd see your breath,
Hmm.
and there was a noose hanging in the closet.
Mm.
Well, when my dad and I went there to interview her, and I have all my clients fill out paperwork and forms, and we were having her fill out the one form, and it was like something was telling this lady what to write. So when we went to do the initial investigation, she went downstairs with us, and I was showing the rest of my team the noose in the closet from the previous owners, and come to find out the owners had played with a Ouija board in the house. Former owners did, and as soon as I opened that closet door up, she immediately is like a switch just flipped. She started freaking out, crying, and she ran upstairs. And her daughter says, "I love you, mom," and she just went like this, ran out the door. So my one member went to her and was holding her hands, and we are just trying to settle her down and calm her down. Well, as they were doing that, she was going, "It's mine. I don't want it to leave." Eyes rolled in the back of her head, and then an upside down cross appears on the side of her neck.
Hmm.
And that was my very first bad case that I've done. And it took about 6 months to get it out of there and get her back to normal. And now everything is good. She goes to church, back to normal. Knitting, we're like family to her. She invites us over for dinner, and
Right.
her husband's a firefighter, paramedic. And she wanted to kill that man. He didn't do nothing wrong. She just wanted to kill him for some reason and hurt him, and because he's a strong faith guy, he's a strong-willed guy, especially for being a firefighter and the stuff that he sees,
Yeah.
and so it was trying to divide them, divide the family like the typical demonic entity would, and now she's good. She's back to normal. And another case we got called into in Nebraska, they had a team in there, and they left in, like, 10 seconds. They weren't even there a whole 10 minutes. We're gone. Something scared them out of the house. They had a minister in there that did a blessing on the house, but it didn't work. Guy turned out to be a phony minister.
Oh.
Showed up in cowboy boots and a cowboy hat.
Oh.
Didn't have his traditional clergy stuff, nothing when he did the house. And the lady had sent us a video of her fiance. He was sitting there in the chair, and he's sitting there going like this, like he's typing something. And then she asked him, "What are you doing?" He had no control of his body, and then he just turns and looks at her with this, like, dark stare and goes, "Shh." And we got called in on that one, went in there and took care of that one, and my dad did some work with him and with some holy water, and they're back to normal. The place used to be a school back in the 1800s for blind kids,
Oh.
and they had a cage down in the basement where they would lock the kids up in there that were bad. leave them in there, starve them, and then pull up the plywood floor and drop them down a hole.
Starve them to death?
Yep.
Wow.
And it was built in like 18, I want to say like 1820. Place was,
Crazy. It's
and
crazy when you hear these things, and
oh
it's
yeah,
all real.
and I tell people all the time, you go out searching for this stuff, and hello, Cicadea Paranormal, welcome in. I tell people all the time, even when I do lectures on it, I'm like, you go in looking for this stuff, you're gonna find it. You play with fire, you're gonna get burned.
Yeah.
It's
It's like I said.
not a game.
You have to make sure you are spiritually protected and that you have a high level of faith, especially just doing regular paranormal investigation. But you get involved in something like Bishop Buck says, number one, why are you even there? Getting involved in something like that where you can risk taking something home yourself,
Yep.
and even a lot of clergy have issues sometimes. And again, it comes down to their level of experience and faith, but it's not something to toy around with. People want to have these experiences. Like I said, the people that come up and they say, I want to have that experience. I have to know that it's real. It's like, well, cancer is real. Do you want to have that experience or just,
Yeah.
understand that it's real and thank God that you never have the experience? It's crazy the way people are, but yeah, write your books. If you don't write your cases down, then nobody's going to know about it. Somebody may find something of value. And the entire reason I wrote the Dark Seed series is to warn kids, don't open doorways, especially to reach the preteens and the teens. Do not play with Ouija boards. I got in big trouble in Salem when I was there in 2014 for the whole month because the number of people that would come up to my table with their Ouija boards that they just bought, at Omen or Hex and things like that. I said, I'd tell them to return it. Do yourself a favor and go return that and don't ever use one, right? And the owners would come over and say, you're ruining my Halloween business. It's like, I'm trying to stop people from opening doorways. They know that they work and they're selling them in their stores because it's a hot commodity Halloween time. But anyway, I get in arguments with people at the many conventions I do when they're selling their homemade Ouija boards and stuff. It's like, they're not just games, that what can happen. Oh, it's just a tool. It's like, well, it's like the same argument that the firearms manufacturers aren't responsible. And they're not, but it's something that is a dangerous piece of paraphernalia and you're going to use it anyway, just because you want a thrill, but that the kids look at it as a game. Because it's sold as such. When you look at Parker Brothers, the original logo for Parker Brothers, it's a black spiraling vortex.
Yep.
And they even had a pamphlet in there saying, that, warning people. But yeah, you can, watch what you wish for and, armor up. My friend Bill Bean, the deliverance minister, he's such an amazing man. I don't know how he does it except through the power of God, but he'll get up at like 3 a.m. and drive, 11 hours to get up to Northern Michigan to go help a family overnight, and then get very little sleep and get on the road and head back home afterwards. And it's like, you need, he's protected, man. There's no way anybody in his 50s could do that, but he's on a mission and he's protected and that's what he does. And to be in that man's presence, I wish there were more people that came to the Defeating the Demonic events because they would just see this man, the way he prays and the authority that he uses. We actually had an impromptu deliverance on stage. He was a man that came up that he was abused as a boy and he was suffering, throughout his whole life. And he had a spirit in him, and it affected one of the archbishops very badly. And he had to go sit down and so forth. But, to see him staring into the eyes and telling this being to depart and so forth was powerful. I don't believe so. The difference between my understanding about the difference between echo vox and spirit boxes and pendulums and not pendulums, but the devices, the electronics, is that when you're using the Ouija, you're actually inviting these spirits, whether you know it or not, to use your muscular system, your hands and your muscles and your skeleton, to move that planchette. You're inviting them to take control. Can I ask you to promote Dark Siege books? Yeah, of course, please. Tell everybody about them. If they can help one person, my mission is successful, and it's to help people understand that these things are real. How do they invade our lives?
Yep.
Ouija boards being very dangerous, invitation, evocation, and how to protect yourself. Before it gets bad. Understand what you should and should not do, and how you investigate a house according to the Warrens methodology, which is the way I recreate everything and put that in the analysis and help them understand that. The biggest thing to understand that we are fields of awareness, temporarily animating a physical, what appears to be a physical body, but it's nothing physical at all, because quantum physics has proven that nothing is physical, everything is frequency state, and electromagnetic state, an electromagnetic state, and that frequency and vibration, as Nikola Tesla said, is the key to understanding the universe. So raise your vibration by exposing yourself to wonderful high vibrational things, whether it's music or books or content, genuine heart-centered connections with other people, where you realize that what you do to others, you do to yourself. Get out in nature and, enjoy the wildlife and the trees and the grass, and walk in the ground and ground yourself, and don't focus on all this dark stuff. There's so much dark stuff, and here I wrote Dark Siege, but the purpose is it is a siege. Spirits laid siege to this house, trying to burst their way in, especially in the second book. But it's to help you understand how they do it and what the different phases are: the infestation phase, the oppression, the obsession, infestation, possession, deliverance, demoniacal retribution, and the horrors that the clergy have to go through during the most extreme cases, putting themselves on the line, their financial well-being and their physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual well-being. These are assaults from all angles at all times, against every aspect of your being, physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, at the same time, from all angles, and from above and below too. That's the crazy thing.
Right. That's like Sister Farrah Rose Deal. She does her own YouTube for the Swords of St. Michael, and she'll take these demonic horror movies and she'll pick them apart. What is
Yeah.
real? What Hollywood stages? She just
Right.
did one last night actually on her channel, and she's wrote several demonology books with her and
I
Ken.
know that.
So I mean, it is real. I mean, even with the spirit boxes, I mean, we've gotten some. One case that we did, one of my investigators was running a spirit box app on her phone, and we started getting something that was mocking church music and laughing and Latin chanting. Well, this guy had been playing with darker stuff that he shouldn't have been. He was researching on the internet about this, that, started conjuring stuff up in his house, and he's not a well man. He had a lot of medical issues. His wife wasn't well. They would sleep in separate beds. He woke up one night to some noise, and he took a bunch of sea salt while his wife was sleeping and threw a whole cup of sea salt on top. And when we were there investigating, that spirit box was going off like that. I still have the audio for that with all that demonic chanting and mocking church music. I turned mine on. Mine was acting perfectly normal. It was just hers that was doing it. I was using the exact same one, and mine was just acting totally normal.
Mm.
And we tried to debunk it, couldn't explain it. That's like if we do Estes method, we protect ourselves before we go under Estes. We're under the blindfold and the headphones, and then we only go like maybe 15 minutes, and that's it.
Mm-hmm.
And then we take a break because it gets hard on your body when you do something like that. And we did one at the prison, and we were using our abilities instead of using a spirit box. But so we couldn't hear nothing. If we heard the person ask the question, we didn't answer. It was when we didn't hear the question being asked, we used our abilities to pick up what was coming through in our mind's eye, and I started picking up on Ed and Lorraine Warren's items that had been housed upstairs on display, cell number 20. So I asked Wade about it, and Wade confirmed it. He says, "That's where I stored them. They were
Mhm.
stored in cell number 20." So you were picking up the man who inhabited that cell. He wasn't happy that that stuff was being stored in his cell.
Right.
And then picked up fire, which was ended up being the firebug that was housed in Missouri State.
Mm.
And he was housed down in the dungeon for 18 years and went blind because it's total darkness down there. And then through the blindfold, I seen something dark come through, and I was quick pulled the blindfold off. That was it for me,
Yeah. Yeah.
and I cut the ties from it.
It's all fascinating. Crazy fascinating. Well, it's close to 2 hours. So I think we should probably call it. I'm actually officiating a wedding tomorrow.
All right,
Um,
yeah, we'll let you get some rest.
so that'd be good. But yeah, let's do this again because I think it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, definitely. We'll keep in touch, and we'll do a part 2
All right.
on it.
Cool.
I thank you for being my guest tonight.
Thanks for having me.
And if you want to hang backstage for a few minutes when after I close the show out.
All right.
All right, I'm gonna pull them down. Thank you again, Jason, for being a guest on the show.
Night.
I'll talk to you in a minute.
All right.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning in tonight. Hope you guys enjoyed the show. Hope it was informational for you guys. Like I said in the beginning of the show, for those that missed it, this show is moving to Saturday nights now at 8 o'clock. So join me next week on Saturday, 8 o'clock, with my guest, the godfather of the paranormal himself, my cousin John Zaffis. So we will see you all next Saturday.